So we're going to be starting the workshop about 5 to 10 minutes later. But since you're all here, I don't want to waste your time, and I'll just show you a quick video that's sort of related to today's workshop. Okay. So this is a video on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the context is the children have to teach their father how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And when I do teacher training for pre-service teachers, this is one of the first videos that I'll show. So while we're waiting, let's have a quick look at this 7-minute video. And while you're watching, you might think, what would I do differently? How would I teach someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Okay. All right, let's go. What if I turn on English translation?
Do you guys think you can write down some instructions and teach me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Yeah.
Then do it.
I knew we were gonna do this. I heard Dad talking to Mom.
Don't choke yourself on my head. Sometimes they do what you tell them.
Well, I'm fine.
Wow. Step 1. Get 2 pieces of bread out.
Got him.
Get a butter knife and get some peeby. Take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
No, Dad, with the peanut butter.
I'm just doing what it says. It says take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
Hold on.
Get some jelly, rub it on the other half of the bread.
No, Dad, open the jelly.
Well, it doesn't say to do that. Put the breads together on top of each other. Take a big bite. Fail.
Yeah. Oh, God. Sorry, I had to make it extremely specific.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. Take 2 pieces of white bread out of the bag. Take the lid off the jar of peanut butter. Get a butter knife and stick it inside of the peanut butter jar. With the knife, scoop a bit of peanut butter out of the...
That seems like a lot.
A bit means a lot?
In my world.
Spread your scoop of peanut butter onto 1 of your pieces of bread with the knife. All right? There we go.
Doing better than before, though.
Open the jelly jar. Squeeze it onto the other piece of bread.
No.
Done. Closer. Get 2 pieces of bread. Get some peanut butter. Take the peanut butter knife. Open the peanut butter. Put the knife in the PB. Get some jelly. Open the jelly. Squirt the jelly onto the bread. Take the butter knife with the peanut butter on it. Wipe it all over the piece of bread that's blank. Take the butter knife, rub the jelly all over the bread.
Oh, you're doing better.
That's all over. Put the 2 pieces on top of each other.
This is how I meant.
Take 2 pieces of white bread out of the bag. Take the lid off the jar of peanut butter. Get a butter knife and stick it inside of the peanut butter jar. With the knife, scoop some of the peanut butter out of the inside of the jar. Spread your scoop of peanut butter onto 1 of your pieces of bread with the knife.
No.
Squeeze some jelly onto the other piece of bread. Spread the jelly on the bread with the butter knife. Put your 2 pieces of bread, peanut butter and jelly sides together. Done. Get 2 pieces of bread. Get some peanut butter. Get some jello in the peanut butter. Get a butter knife. Put the butter knife in the peanut butter. Take the butter knife out of the peanut butter.
You did it wrong. No.
Take one piece of bread and take the butter knife that has the peanut butter on it and spread it all over the top of the piece of bread.
Dad,
That's the top.
I need the signs.
Squirt some on another piece of bread. Take the butter knife, rub it all over the top of the piece of bread.
I quit. You're not making any sense. Sorry, ruined it on purpose. He knows how to make one. I know, Evan. It's a joke. It's a kingdom. Oh.
You want to take your sandwich with you?
Oh, this is my fault.
Yes. I'm glad I made that for you.
Can I have shake one with it?
Yeah, go take that one to mommy.
Okay. I edited a bit.
Take 2 pieces of white bread, take the lid off the jar of peanut butter. Get a butter knife and stick it inside the peanut butter jar. With the knife, scoop some of the peanut butter out of the inside of the jar. Spread your scoop of peanut butter onto the face of one of your pieces of bread with the knife. Squeeze some jelly onto the other piece of bread. Spread the jelly on the bread with the butter knife. Put your 2 pieces of bread, peanut butter and jelly sides together. Done.
Now eat it.
Not the best,
Well, you made it.
but I think qualifies. That's a win.
Woo!
Well, Evan and John, did that go as you expected?
Yes. I expected to win.
Well, you sort of won. But really, I feel like we were all losers. You guys have fun at all?
Yeah.
There.
Okay, so what is it, 210? I think.
Yeah. So
The reason why I show this video is you can see that the children tried a couple of times and they revised their lesson plan each time. And each time the father found some kind of mistake. And sometimes that happens when we're teaching our students. We might be using certain types of language that our students just misunderstand, or the way that we deliver information isn't clear enough for our students. And you can see that the child there got really frustrated on his third try. And sometimes students can get frustrated, and professors can also get frustrated when students get frustrated. And then what happens? We're all frustrated. So it's a good video to just remind yourself that uh, there is no perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There is no perfect lesson, but we can improve each lesson and kind of make small tweaks here and there. So with that said, yeah, Tally.
Thank you. Thank you. Ramon. And yeah, the English must improve. So that's the thing that we're today. So yeah, again, welcome everyone to join today's EMI lecture. So today is our honor to invite Ramon to give us a lecture about teaching English. I think the most important thing is Ramon has a lot of experience and also he got a degree of the master about the TESOL. So I think he had a lot of experience and can share with us. And if you have any question, also feel free to ask afterward. So without further ado, let's just give Ramon a round of applause.
Before we start, do you all have a worksheet?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you'll need a worksheet in front of you and also something to write. Okay. And if you don't have one, just give us a few moments. And while you're waiting, share the worksheet with the person next to you if you see that they don't or if they're missing a worksheet. Okay. Okay, so this worksheet is a study guide. Okay. And it's one of the tools that I use for efficient pedagogy in my class. So we're going to trial this study guide and figure out how it could enhance some of our lessons, some of our learning, and some of our instruction. Okay, now there are 3 pages. In the first half of the workshop, we'll be focusing on just the first page, and then the second half of the workshop, page 2 and page 3. Okay, and there are a couple of exercises towards the end of this worksheet. Now, you will get a copy of these slides, so you don't need to take a picture. Okay, but if you do want to take notes, I left the blank side of the 4th page open, so you can take notes there. Okay, are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah? All right. Great, some of you can read. All right. Okay, so I'm going to demo what I call a silent presentation. Okay, so every time you read a slide and you finish it, you just raise your hand. Okay? Now, while we're doing the silent presentation, pay attention to the first page of the study guide. You'll need to write down some answers according to the silent presentation. And remember, there are some answers for you to write on the study guide. Congratulations! You've just finished your first silent presentation. So now what I want you to do in the next few moments, if you have your mobile phone, scan the QR code and just type a few thoughts or ideas. Please do not write an essay, just a couple of ideas or words or concepts that you remember from the last several slides. Okay, I'll give you about 2 minutes. Okay, it looks like we still have some answers incoming, but let's look at some of the responses so far. Let's see, we have reduced cognitive load, help students to learn better, and more. We also have it's a framework for understanding how the brain processes information. That's a very clean, exact definition. And then we need to minimize cognitive load of students in order to enhance their learning experience. So pretty good so far. Now, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The bad news is I can't tell you everything about cognitive load theory in just 2 hours. I would need 2 semesters. But I will try to give you some highlights and some things that I think you can apply in your very next lesson and your next course design for 2026. Now, I like using things like Mentimeter for collecting evidence of comprehension. Right? Now, a lot of professors, when they have instruction, they'll call on one student and they'll say, okay, tell me something that you remember about cognitive load theory. Okay? And if the student is your best student, they'll give you a quick answer in less than 20 seconds. But you know, the average wait time for a professor after asking a question is like less than 10 seconds. So if the student doesn't respond to me in 10 seconds, the professor starts to get nervous, right? The professor starts to sweat. The professor might think, oh, maybe this person doesn't understand my question. But it also could be they do, they're just still processing information in both English, their home language, and then the language of the classroom. So that's, psychology, mathematics, statistics, whatever field you're in, the language of that field. So sometimes we need to give our students more time to process. Second reason, when I'm asking this one student, everyone else is just waiting. They don't have time to interact. They don't have time to actually offer their ideas. So having something like Mentimeter is a little bit more efficient because it doesn't just turn one student into one winner. It turns all students into many winners. And the professor in this case just wants to see what students are thinking and where the professor can actually support them. Okay, so Kahoot, Mentimeter, even Google Docs, there are plenty of documents or applications you can use to sort of have like a collaborative classroom for answering certain types of questions. Okay. All right, so let's move on. Yeah, today I was gonna have my AI agent do the whole workshop, so you're gonna see like an AI person here, but I just couldn't get it to work. So maybe that'll be for the next workshop. How to use an AI agent in your presentations. Okay, so welcome to today's workshop, improving pedagogical efficiency, a cognitive load approach, digital content design. So one of my fields of interest is how do we teach with more efficiency? How do we cut out the wasted time? Because every professor I talk to in Taiwan, one of the common challenges is I don't have enough time to teach everything in the course. We have a shorter semester, we have too many holidays, and students aren't doing homework. But yet, I still have to get my students to learn a lot of content in a relatively short time. So, we need to improve our pedagogical efficiency. Okay, so this workshop will cover these three things. Now, as we go through the workshop, um, I won't say everything on the slide. I will rely on you to read part of the slide. You remember the silent presentation? Did I speak? No. Not much, right? You were doing most of the reading. Why? Well, the average native English speaker speaks anywhere between 150 to 200 words per minute. How about reading? Do you think reading is faster than speaking? Yes, it is, especially for B2 and up. The average reader can read anywhere between 400 and 800 words per minute. You can read faster than you can speak. So when I am presenting, if you're a professor and you're reading off your slide, chances are you're reading at a much slower pace than what students can actually read on their own. So you're wasting time and you're using your own energy. Now, for me, I know a lot of my pre service teachers and in service teachers, in year 5, they burn out. They say, oh, teaching is so hard. I have to grade and lesson plan, classroom manage. So part of this is in sustainable teaching. Let the students do the work. You just relax, facilitate, guide. You don't always have to be in front. Yes.
Yeah, so well, student not have a question like if I need to read all slide, why don't I just stay home and read your slide? Why need to come to the classroom?
Look at the study guide. In the study guide, the students have to read the slide in order to answer parts of the study guide. Without the study guide, there is no reason to be in the course. Now, you bring up a very good comment. Did you know that more than 50% of professors now give their students class slides and class notes? And most of the time, when I observe professors teaching, you know what the professor is doing? Reading off their class notes and class slides. So a lot of students are in the back watching YouTube, looking at social media. I've seen it. I've observed the class, and most of the students in the back were not even paying attention to the professor. Why? They didn't need to. They already have the slides and the notes from the professor. So we'll talk about this later on in the workshop, but at some point, you're going to have to switch from giving them class notes to giving them a study guide. which is the example you have right in front of you. By the way, did all of you get a copy of the study guide? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so John Sweller, a pretty prominent guy in cognitive load theory, otherwise known as CLT. Okay, and if I were to summarize everything about cognitive load theory in just one concept, analogy, think of a luggage and you're traveling. And you know, most people when they travel, they overpack. Most professors, when they lesson plan, they overplan, right? And so part of CLT is to figure out what do students need now and what do students need later. Here, you don't need everything to travel. You have to figure out what is the most important for that trip, in our cases, for that class or for that course. Okay, so CLT is designed to sort of cut out some of the things we don't need in our instruction. Did you know my brother is a magician? No, you don't, because you don't know my brother.
Yeah.
But you know, part of magic is direction. Every time something moves, your eyes just follow it. So sometimes slides are like that. I didn't tell you to read the slide, but when the slide came up, you automatically looked, right? So sometimes you don't actually have to say anything. You just have to kind of look at it, look at the students, and they'll figure it. Or have something on the study guide, okay? Okay, so let's move on to our next section, and this will be in the second part of your study guide, so pay attention. Okay, so there are more parts of CLT, but the first two parts we'll start off is IL and EL. And IL stands for intrinsic load, and EL stands for extraneous load. So you'll see these concepts come up throughout the workshop. Some of you might be thinking, what is inherent difficulty and what is unnecessary distractions? And so let me ask you the question. Do you know calculus?
Yeah.
Is it hard?
No.
Oh, she's now, there are some things that are inherently difficult. Unnecessary distractions, how we present the problem to the students, how the material is designed, the language of the problem. That is all things that add unnecessary distractions to something that is already difficult enough. So when we're teaching, we have to figure out, okay, we know this is hard. We don't want to make it any harder. We have to make it appropriate for their levels. Okay, we need to cut out the distractions. Okay, so let's look at figure number one. In figure number one, which is more, intrinsic load or extraneous load? And anyone can answer.
Intrinsic.
Intrinsic load, right? Is that good or bad?
Better than the second.
Yes. Now, you might be asking, well, why is it better than the second one? Remember, the second one, unnecessary. They're distractions. We want to reduce extraneous load. So if I were to rephrase this, number one would be a good example of efficient pedagogy. Example number two is inefficient pedagogy. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, extraneous load is much more than intrinsic load. And at that point, that means a couple of things. One, the material is poorly designed, or you're trying to teach too much in one lesson. Okay. Where is the balance? There is no perfect formula because it sort of depends on what did you teach in the previous lesson and what will you teach in the next lesson. Okay, so every lesson is sort of a negotiation of how much intrinsic load and how much you're balancing extraneous. So we'll talk about that in the next few slides. Okay, so take a few moments, have a quick read. Sure. I observed the class last year and I was sitting in the back, and the professor gave the task with the instructions. And then the professor said, "Everyone okay?" No one answered. So the professor thought, "Okay." And then the students did the activity. And then I was observing students doing the activity. And what were the students doing? The students were talking to each other and said, "What are we supposed to do? I don't understand the instructions. Let's use AI." And that's where extraneous load comes in. We are making it harder for our students to do the task, right? So we have to be cleaner with our instructions. We have to be cleaner with our material design, and we have to think about timing and pacing too. So if we can do all that, it might help them get to more enhanced decision making. So that's the ideal goal. We reduce extraneous load in order to let our students have more enhanced decision making. Okay. Okay, so with a person or couple of people next to you, discuss phrases you remember from the last several slides, 3 to 4, and you can also take notes on your study guide. Now, if you hear some words from your partner that you think are interesting, there is a space for you to write their words too, right? So I'll give you about 4 minutes. Start. Okay. Okay, so one of the nice things I like about the study guide is, let's say a student zones out for the first 10 minutes of class, right? They might be thinking, "Oh, I just broke up with my girlfriend. I'm hungry, I didn't eat breakfast. I have to fix my car," right? Students are, before they're students, they're humans. So when they're in your class, they're not only thinking about your class, they're thinking about their lives. So the nice thing about the study guide is, in case that happens, they might miss a few moments of your presentation. A lot of the content is here, so they can just have a quick look at the study guide and still have a chance to write something. But if they can't write anything, at least they can still listen to their partner and write their answers. And that's a second chance of learning or missed learning. Okay, so study guides are very important for efficient learning. Okay, so let's move on. Congratulations, you are 35% finished with this workshop. Hooray. So let's move on to the second part. And after this part, we'll take a short break. For some of you who do need to go to the restroom or stretch or get some going. Okay, so the second part, we're going to be talking about redundancy effect with spoken word. Okay, and 99% of professors I've observed have issues with this concept. Okay, so written and spoken info. And what that means is, I'm speaking at the same time there's content on the slide. Okay, now a lot of times what professors will do is they'll have content on the slide and then they'll just read the slide. But how do some professors read the slide? Like this. Written and spoken info presented together, compete for working Memory. I've seen so many professors do that. It's like they didn't rehearse they know it, but for some reason it just doesn't come out naturally. Other professors, you might see this. They're all the way in the corner of the classroom. They can't even see their slide screen, but they're still reading their slide from their notes, right? And so the student sometimes has some dilemmas. Should they look at the professor or should they look at the slide? Or should they just give up and just go to YouTube with their earphones, right? So we have to eliminate those kind of decisions that students have to make. We have to eliminate interference, okay? And just a little hint, every time you see red, that might be something for your study guide. Okay. Okay, so what happens when there's interference when we're teaching and learning? Students have to juggle a lot of different things before, during, and after a task. But remember, extraneous load is about removing the unnecessary distractions. This student doesn't have to ride a unicycle, doesn't have to have books on his head or a book on his right side, right? And I know this picture looks a little bit funny, but sometimes when we're actually teaching in class, we might be unconsciously adding things that students don't need during our instruction. Okay, so let me give you a short demo. Okay, this is maybe what a typical slide might look like for some EMI professors. There's a lot of content, right? A lot of text. Now, some professors might think, oh, okay, it's too much content. Let me make it easier for the student. So this is what some professors will do. They'll underline. But the problem is sometimes they bold or underline too much. So it almost defeats the purpose of the underlining and bolding in the first place, right? So some professors, they might go a step further. They might do something like this. A little bit easier, right? Easier for the student at least. But the professor will still do something like this. Modern English has developed over the course of 1400 years and been influenced by many languages. I don't know why they do that. That's some public speaking person must have said make eye contact, but you shouldn't make eye contact. You should engage, and engage takes more time than just making eye contact. And then they'll introduce these four concepts. Okay, not bad because there's not a lot of content, but it's still inefficient. Remember, reading is faster than speaking. So how can you combine those two ideas and make your pedagogy more efficient? Well, if we go to demo version number 4, you can see that a lot of text has disappeared and I've replaced it with a diagram, a figure, or an image. Now, students are going to be able to read this, but after they read this, they're going to be able to focus on me because there's nothing else to read on this slide. And the professor's goal is to articulate, add, explore a little bit deeper information that they can't actually see. We have to help students make those connections. But if we have too much content, it just becomes a reading exercise. And while you're speaking, there may be some interference. Okay. So talk to your neighbor. If you had to teach this diagram, how would you teach it in less than 1 minute? Okay. Talk to your partner. I'll give you a few moments. Okay, I'm fine. Let's pause for 1 moment. Pause. Okay, great. So, let's hear a couple of ideas. You're all professionals at teaching, right? So let's just hear a couple of ideas. Maybe we can start from this side. Who did you talk to?
I told organization. behavior.
Oh, okay. So what were some ideas that you talked with your partner about? How would you teach this?
You have just describe verbally first, and then give them tips about culture of each language, and then finally talk about how they compiled into and contributed to modern English.
Okay. So kind of like a beginning, middle, end. Okay, great. Choose another professor.
So my name is Yang Hua, and I'm from mechanical engineering. And I just sharing some of what I have heard about the modern English is like academic, because English is like a combination of different language in the older days. So like for our use, the normal, our use the words in academic is from Latin and Greeks. So this is from the more like the upper class, so like in the olden days. And for like German and all this is more like a middle or lower class. So this all this kind of language combination into the modern English is from the whole society. So and now that it's transferred, uh, so like the Latin or the Greek these words is more in the academic than our words in English is more from the other parts. So that's what I'm sharing about what
Great, thank you very much. How come you didn't clap for her? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, so thank you for those for your sharing. Now, one thing, remember redundancy. Redundancy means that there's two things, but one of them is not needed. So when I'm teaching this, I don't actually need to say German or Latin or French, right? I can simply just say over the last 1400 years, many languages such as these have influenced modern English. Done. You can move on. I don't need to say French, Latin, Norse, and German. I know it seems so small, but you add that to every slide you teach, it becomes 10 minutes of valuable time you could use somewhere else. Okay, so redundancy means don't teach something that students don't need you to teach. Okay, now if you're interested in a little bit more interaction and what they call activating background knowledge, you could also do something like this to get your students a little bit more involved. Okay, so modern English has had a lot of influence from a lot of different languages. Can you guess what language this could be? What do you think?
Yeah.
Greek. Give me a guess. Well, you already saw the answer, right? Okay, yeah. Actually, in many classes, everyone has a phone. So if some students need more time, maybe just have them Google. But actually, more students these days, they're not Googling. What are they doing? Yeah, they're doing ChatGPT or something, right? But here, you can take a little more time, but that's okay because you're getting students more involved. But of course, I didn't put it for every word. Why didn't I put it for Norse? Well, my guess is most people will know French, Latin, and German, but Norse is sort of a lower frequent word, harder for them to guess. Now, if I put that as blank, this activity will take longer than it needs to be. That's increasing extraneous load. So give them the hard answer, but then let them play with the less hard answers. All right, let's take a short break. I'll see you in about 7 minutes. Have asked me about generative AI. And as we get more involved, or let me rephrase that, as educational technology enhances pedagogy and assessment and curriculum development, we as professors and educators and administrators will have to figure out how to integrate this in our everyday teaching planning. Now, you can learn ChatGPT and you can learn Gemini, they're really powerful. But AI now is being integrated in all kinds of apps that we already use daily. Canva is one example. It's still in beta mode for a lot of functions, but remember, this workshop is about efficiency. Sometimes it may take a long time to figure out how do I reduce or summarize complex content. So for me, sometimes I go to Canva and I go to this pencil and I can ask it to rewrite it. I can ask it to shorten it. I can even ask it to do some other stuff. Can even make a quiz, but that's still beta version. Now, I couldn't do this today, but in some future classes, you may have an AI avatar that helps you teach part of your presentation. And instead of me talking, the AI will be right here. Okay. And this would be good for differentiated instruction. If your students have laptops or iPads, you can say, okay, 20 minutes, go to this folder, access the Canva with the AI, and then learn on your own for about 15 to 20 minutes. I think that's going to happen more and more in the future. And it's going to be more efficient actually for certain types of instruction. But, anyways, you will see that there's some functions that you're going to use later on. But if we go here, let's go to shorten. I like this function here. Okay, there you go. It gives me a shortened version in less than a second. It may not be the perfect version. I'll still have to check it later on, but that's an idea for you to think. Okay, this slide is too heavy. How can I break information down in less than a couple of seconds? You have that option here. Also, if some of you are worried about, you know, the language of the slide, there are some things that you can actually do that can help enhance the grammar and the vocabulary choice on your slide. So it's really good, I think, for Canva, and especially for teachers. Now, this second part here, well, the first part, that's the AI, and it's still in beta version, but you can ask AI to do stuff for you, right? And so sometimes I've asked it to make a picture of my slide, and it did a pretty good job, but 4 out of 10 times good. 6 out of 10, I have to change the prompt or I have to add more information. ChatGPT and Gemini are a little bit stronger, so you'll probably have more success with image making. Okay, but Canva's coming along, and these options exist by just highlighting and then clicking here. Okay, and then you can also make notes and comment for later. So if I want to check this later, it's all saved as notes. Okay. I won't dig too deeply in AI because there are a lot of professors use AI differently. But I'll just touch on AI and how I make things a little bit more efficient for slide design. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so quick check-in. Everyone raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay, so you have two choices. The first choice is only one finger, and the second choice is two fingers. One finger, two fingers. Okay, so intrinsic load is necessary for learning or not necessary for learning? Great, good. Keep your hands up. Extraneous load is? Great. Extraneous load can be? Correct. Okay, thank you very much. Now that's part of one of the ways that I collect evidence. Sometimes professors will be like, okay, does anyone have an answer? Raise your hand. And what do students do? No. But everyone has to raise their hand and they just do the finger. It's a very easy way for you to collect information and evidence of comprehension. If you do have a professional observation, that's one of the criteria. Does the professor collect evidence of comprehension before moving to the next activity? It's a major part that a lot of professors fail because most professors, this is what they do. Everyone okay? Okay. But the professor didn't actually collect any evidence of comprehension. So sometimes that's okay, but sometimes students actually need a little bit more support before they move to the main task. Okay. Oh, sorry. Now, training load can be reduced, but it can never be eliminated just because students have different backgrounds. So what might be extraneous for some students might not be for other students. Okay. It can be reduced, but not eliminated. Okay, so going back to your study guide, we're on the second part of the study guide. Now, this is not in the study guide, but it's sort of the bridge. When you're thinking of designing your material and trying to reduce some extraneous load, these are two questions that you'll have to ask yourself. What is a change that only helps some students? And what is a change that helps, oops, sorry, typo, that helps many students? Ideally, you want to have the answer to this question and this question, but choose this answer. We want to make changes that helps the most amount of students. Okay. Sometimes professors will say, "Oh, okay, this student here is really weak, so I should design my lesson based on this student." Or this student is too strong. I'm not challenging her enough, so I need to design my lesson to be tougher and more difficult. But that only helps some students, and as a result, other students will not feel supported. Okay, so some questions to think about when you reduce extraneous load. Okay, moving on to the next part. Okay, so one of the final parts of this workshop, we'll be talking about split attention. Okay. Many people don't know this, but one of my first majors was pre-med medicine, and I had to take all kinds of biology classes. Oh, it was great. But these were the days when internet was still new. Okay. And I remember looking at the handouts, and this is exactly how I had to study in my course. There was a lot of going back and forth. The task was here, but the content was somewhere else earlier in the document. That's a simplified version of split attention. Now, fast forward 10 years later, I remember when I was studying language, I had a dictionary, paper dictionary, right? What's this word? Stop. Open. Flip, 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 flip. Ah, okay. Hold. Hold. That's another version of split attention. But these days, what do people have now? Phone. Take a picture, translate. They can do everything in one hand now. So technology is actually helping reduce some parts of split attention, but it still exists. And let me show you some examples. Okay, so who here likes mathematics? Yeah, I love mathematics. I'm not good at it, but I like it. Uh, so this might be a common mathematics, well, not common, but common design. Okay, so you'll see text and you'll see the map. All right, this is inherently difficult. And this is what we try to, as professors, challenge our students. We give them instructions, we give them some parts of the task. Okay. But there's split attention. And the split attention is one, what is the first step? Two, what is the second step? Three, the content might not look so far distant, but actually it's far apart. Okay. Which is causing split attention. So some aspects of CLT want you to do something like this. Pay attention to the move. Now, with split attention, I've moved the text closer to the task. I've given step one so they know where to start. And I've given step two, they know what's next. And the text is closer to the task, so that cuts down time for students doing, where do I go? Where do I start? What is this? How is it connected? So that's an idea of reducing split attention. We can't eliminate it, but we can reduce it by moving things closer to each other. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of practice exercises. If you look in your study guide, you'll see an exercise on physics and one on chemistry. With your partner, think, how would I reduce split attention? How would I improve this activity or this task? Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to talk with your partner and discuss. And there's no one answer, there's many answers to this one. Okay, everyone, let's come back. Okay, so a lot of you have some sophisticated ways of enhancing this activity. But remember, I specialize in low tech, low prep, sustainable ways to teach. Because sometimes you don't have all the time in the world to lesson prep. Sometimes you have very little time to change things. And that's one reason why we don't change things, because sometimes we just don't have enough time. I had this one article many years ago, and the title was All the Things I Would Do in My Class If I Had More Time. Right? Because the professor knew this is what a good teacher is. But I can't be that perfect teacher because in the real world, we don't have all the time for a lesson plan, right? Or the resources. So today's workshop, think what are some simple steps to make things a little bit more efficient? And a lot of times it's spacing and movement. Okay, so I think you saw this in your handout. Yeah? So how do we move things closer to make it a little bit easier? I like the diagram, but if you don't have time to make a diagram, what you could do is just put the mathematical ideas closer to the language. For first year students, they'll need this kind of support because first year students will think, well, one, I don't know what this symbol is, and I'm not exactly sure what this word is. All right. So, but if you put them together, they might be able to put this into ChatGPT and figure it out. But this is a quick fix for supporting. Not all students will be supported with this example, but many will. Okay. A train moving from rest, mathematical symbol, reaches a speed of 15 miles per second, V. You could also put it before, but I'll put it after. After 5 seconds, T, and then you can use that as a teaching frame. Okay. Now we don't have time to do this in this workshop, but there's a concept called workable problems, and it gives you a kind of framework for how to teach this kind of problem. So later on, I'll give you sort of a link to that idea on how to actually teach workable problems. Okay, let's move on. So, chemistry. That was my hardest subject in college, especially organic chemistry. Has anyone taken organic chemistry? Was it easy? It was hard. I gave up chemistry because of that. Okay, so now if I'm teaching this and I'm making a material, most professors would just kind of read the text and then they'll interact with the visual aid. That's good. That's good enough. That's old school. But if you have it in a handout, you can't do that, right? So if you're giving a student an exercise, they may not be efficient for solving the task, especially in class. So we need to figure out how to simplify the language and how to connect it to the picture. Okay, so I saw some of you actually do this on your worksheet. Let me know if you think this is a little bit easier. All right, you can see a lot of text has been taken out. The student can see this in maybe less than 10 seconds, and then the student has to now focus on you. You can bridge the gap and add more. Go deeper. Now, this is for first year students. If it's third year, fourth year graduate students, they may not need this level of support. They may need other levels of support, but this is just for kind of EMI first year, second year students. Yeah, it took me 2 hours to figure this out the first time I saw it. But some of you figured it out in less than 5 minutes. Congratulations. The main idea is to annotate some of the language and connect it to the diagram. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have time to cover all the different fields, but when I send the copy of the slides, I'll give you some more examples in different fields, like geography, linguistics, to give you some ideas on how you can reduce split attention. Okay, you are 77% finished, almost done. Just hang in there. Okay, so the last concept, there's so many concepts in CLT, but this one I think is important, especially if you're teaching a 3-hour course or a 3-hour lesson in the evening. Transient info effect. Okay, and then this will be on the last stage of your study guide. Section 5. Do your students take notes in class or do they take pictures? They take a lot of pictures, right? Every time you show a slide, the student just, no, take a picture. It could be good, but it could also be dangerous. Okay, so let me give you a little demo. This is an example of transient info effect. I'm teaching something on punctuation, and I might teach it, and I might go through the slide, right? And I might teach it and go through the example. And then I'll teach it, and I'll give the rule and the example. And then I'll give some annotations. And then I'll do the same thing, but for a different rule. And then I'll give the problem. Okay. Now, what does transient info effect mean? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you remember what was on the first slide of the demo? How about the second slide? I probably went through it too fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's what transient info effect is. It's not exactly the speed, but it's more of the timing of how much we spend on a particular slide. So the problem is not that students are taking a picture. The problem is why are they taking a picture? And for most of your students, they're taking a picture because the slide content is too fast for them to actually take notes. And in the next generation, they're not going to know how to take notes. They're just going to know how to take pictures. Okay, now, Sometimes it's good, especially if you're sitting all the way in the back and you can't see the front. That's okay. But for most people, I recommend to avoid letting your students take pictures if you have a study guide. Okay, the study guide, you can say to your students, okay, we have a study guide, and I'll give you a copy of the slides later, so you don't need to take this a picture on your phone. Okay, but you need to sort of take notes. Okay, so how do we reduce this? How do we prevent this from happening? Well, now in a traditional pedagogical approach, you'll introduce content. You might show an example. You might show another example, and then you'll have an activity. Okay? Transit info effect says that the more slides you have here, there's a chance that earlier content in the presentation might have been forgotten. All right? On slide 1, 50-50, because when they come to class, they're a little bit motivated. But in the middle of the class, they're asleep, they're hungry, they're tired, there are a lot of stuff. And so they may not be able to recall everything from the middle. They may have a better chance at slide 10 because it's closer to slide 15. It's closer to the activity, right? If I said red, green, purple, blue, topaz, magenta, ice cream, probably the last adjective. What was the last adjective? Magenta. You'll remember because it was the one that came right before the ice cream. Sometimes content is like that. Your students will remember something that came most recent. Not all the time, but they'll have a easier chance of recalling content relatively recent versus content not recent. Okay? Okay, so there's a term here called working memory, and it's in connection with long-term memory. A lot of times students are dealing with obstacles to working memory. Now, the bad news is, you know how sometimes we say, oh, this student's language level is too high or too low or not enough? Sometimes that's connected to their working memory. How much can they hold in their working memory while they're in class? Some people can hold a lot of information, some people can't. Okay? So we need to support them in figuring out how can we enhance activities that don't take a lot of working memory. So this is the example that I give. If you're in a restaurant and a waiter pours you a glass of water, which picture would you prefer? The first picture or the second picture? The first one? Not the second one? It's faster. Right? Why not the second picture?
You spill up.
Slow motion.
What happened?
It's like a slow motion picture.
The second one?
Yeah. And also the cup. Okay. It's overflow.
That's a good term, overflow. You know,
most of the water are wasted.
yeah, and it's wasted, right? So we're trying to teach all of this content in a very limited time, but what ends up happening is that the second picture, we're going too fast, there's overflow, and everything that we teach isn't going to help them anyways, right? And let me ask you a question. After they finish filling the cup, which one do you think you could drink? Maybe the first picture. The second one, you think, ooh, value. It's all the way at the top, so more water for thing, but it's harder to drink because you're worried about it spilling. But the first cup, that's more natural. That's a little bit normal. So an easy analogy for cognitive load theory is trying to figure out how can we teach in a way that resembles most similar to the first picture instead of the second picture. Because I tell you, some students, they come to me after class and they cry. They're like, I need an A. And I tell them, you're not going to get an A. And the student says, why? It's because the content is too hard. And then I have to ask myself, is this the only student, or do many students have the same challenge? If it's many students, probably I'm doing the second picture. If it's only one or two students, maybe I'm okay. But case by case scenario, right? Yeah, I like the first picture, but I think for value, the second picture, I don't know. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so throughout this workshop, and the first part, I did a study guide. The second part, I did a sort of mini recall activity. The third one, I asked you to raise your hands and your fingers, right? Those are all variations of a recall activity and a lead-in activity. I would say that when you're teaching, don't wait too long to do the main activity. Have mini activities every few slides or every few sections to help your students stay in the game of your lesson. Because I see students sleep in class all the time, or I don't see them engaged. And it could be human issues, but it could also just be that the content that you're delivering, there's too much extraneous load. There's too many obstacles and unnecessary distractions. Okay, I have some good news and I have some bad news. What do you want first, the good news or the bad news? The bad news, great, that's my favorite. Okay, the bad news is our students' attention span is getting worse every generation. And I find it to be true for myself too. You know, before the internet, before the smartphone, I could just sit on a bus and look outside and enjoy the scenery. But these days, I'm on a bus and after 2 seconds, I'm already bored. I don't know what to do. I feel anxious. I feel like I need to use my phone. Right?
Yeah, it's partially because everybody else is doing the same thing, right?
It's becoming
And I
normal.
find no one to talk to.
Yeah, and that has an effect on attention. Some people can't read for more than 40 minutes anymore, right? Because they're used to short form content. They can get everything on TikTok in 20 seconds. And if it's longer than 20 seconds, it's too long, right? So, what does that say about our teaching when we have a 3 hour course at 6 o'clock and we're teaching physics, right? Our students can't handle some of the demands necessary for our instruction. So, this is by no means a 100% backed study because every person is different. But generally, from 18 and up, which is the demographic of our students, your best student with a strong working memory can last in your lesson 50 minutes before they need some kind of break. But your worst student, after 36 minutes, they're zoned out. Whatever you're teaching, they're not following efficiently. They're almost wasting their time. So, a lot of good pedagogical practices say somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes in your lesson, you need some kind of intervention. Now, that could be an activity, that could be a break, that could be something just to get their mind moving, okay, in a different direction. Because if you don't have this intervention, this keeps going down, okay? But if you have an intervention and follows the same thing, and then after that, you need another intervention. Okay. But let me ask you a question. When do you think students are most tired in class? At the beginning of the lesson or at the end of the lesson? Let's ask the student.
The middle.
In the middle.
Are you most tired at the beginning or the end? Boy, we have to teach. But let me ask you a question. When do you give homework in your class? At the beginning or the end?
Yeah.
When do you usually have the main task in your class? Towards the middle and end. You're giving activities to students at a time when they're least powerful, when their working memory is dried up, and they're actually not ready to learn because their mind is tired. Right? So my best advice that I can give is that somehow your main task, the main part of your class, is somewhere in the middle. If you wait to the end, students may actually not have the cognitive processing ability to actually understand. Students come to me well, not to me, but when I was a teacher before, and other professors have told me the same thing. I had to tell 10 students the same thing about the homework. Or the student kept asking me the same question about the homework. Why didn't the student understand my homework instructions? It could be because we're giving homework at the wrong time, right? And we're creating an environment that has too much extraneous load. Extraneous load can also be connected to the human part, human biology, okay? Okay. There was not a recent study, but you can see that they did a study on 6.9 million videos and participants in what I call a MOOC. It's like a free online platform where you can study short courses. And this is what they found. The median watch time for short form and long form content was 6 minutes, meaning that if a student enrolled in a MOOC and watched the self-paced video, after 6 minutes, the median people got off the MOOC and did something else. This was in 2014. I wonder what the research would say today with all of the distractions. So think about that in your class. How much content can I give students before they can't handle any more content, right? When can I give an intervention in order to prevent them from zoning out? Because we know that students are going to zone out. Students are busy people. They have part-time jobs. Some of them have full-time jobs. Some of them are parents. Some of them are breadwinners. They're the main person who brings income to their family, or maybe their parents are sick. So there's a lot of reasons why students have these challenges that make it even harder for them to focus in class. So the insights say segment videos into chunks. Instead of showing a 10-minute video, show 3 3-minute videos, something like that. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the workshop. Hooray. All right. A little wrap home and takeaway. Okay, so I showed you this example earlier on in the workshop a few slides ago, and we want to get as close as possible to this, even though sometimes it will be like this for various reasons that are out of our control. But we want to avoid, we want to discourage students taking too many pictures of our slide content. The reason why is this is what happens when a student takes a picture. They take a picture, and that's it. They don't interact with the picture. The mindset of some students will be, I'm going to take a picture now, and then I'm going to look at this picture later. But we know that doesn't work a lot of times. They need to interact now. But if they're taking too many pictures, what's happening is they're not thinking about what's happening in the lesson, and they're trying to review it after the lesson, which for some people is okay, but for most people, they need to interact with content in real time. Okay, so pictures are okay, but discourage students from taking too many pictures. But if you do that, you have to make sure that there's a support mechanism for them to not have to take pictures. We want to avoid the transient info effect. Okay. I like this quote. Ooh, if you want to sound really cool with your native English speakers, friends, you just say memory. It's a residue of thought. Most native English speakers are, wow, that's cool. Right? I like this quote because in order to have memory, you need to think. If you're not thinking, you don't have memory. When you're taking pictures, you're not thinking. So if you're taking pictures, there's no memory that's happening in your brain. Everything is happening in your phone. Again, it's not 100% bad because some students need it, but some students don't. Okay. Okay, so here are some key topics. Again, there are a lot of things within the CLT framework, but it's not really a framework, it's more of suggestions, things to think about when you're designing your lesson. So we talked a little bit about redundancy effect. You don't need to speak everything on your slide. Some students can just read. Split attention effect, make things a little bit closer in time and space. And then transit info effect, don't wait too long to do the main activity. Okay, and these are just kind of a summarized vocabulary. These refer to delivery, design, and timing. So if you can think about your delivery, it might enhance or reduce redundancy, design with split attention, and then timing with your slide design. Basic. Okay, and a lot of people who do practice CLT, that's like their famous phrase. Info that must be combined should be placed in space and time. Space, we looked at the chemistry and physics. That's an example of space. Time is an example of the transient info effect. Don't wait too many slides to have your main activity. Move your main activity closer to the pedagogical side. Okay, so time and space, or space and time. Okay, so some ideas. And this is tricky for some of our environments. When I was a student, um, I have 14 degrees. It's terrible. I spent too much money on education. I'm sure most of you have spent a lot of time in education too. But every school you go to has a different policy on homework. And I always think the success or the difference between a successful environment and a non successful environment partly is due to how we do homework. Okay, now in some classes, for every 2 hours of instruction, you have 1 hour of homework. Okay, that seems to be the status quo in a lot of classrooms. When I was studying as an undergrad in America, they did times two. So if you have 2 hours of class, you have 4 hours of homework. How about in Taiwan? If you have 2 hours of class, how much homework time do you get?
What's I think about 80, 20.
20 hours.
No. I mean the ratio.
Oh, ratio.
Yeah.
Okay, like 80-20. Okay. Yeah, there's no right ratio because it depends on the topic.
depends.
Right? Yeah. How about you? How much homework do you give for each class?
I give maybe 2 hours for 10, 15 minutes homework.
So 2 hours of class, 15 minutes of homework.
Yeah.
Ooh, I want to be in his class. I was a student. What do you think? How much homework do you think is good?
No.
Maybe someone's like,
All the first determined by just one exam. I think they'll
2 hours of class, 8 hours of homework? 4 hours. Oh, so he's going by the 2 and 2 rule. All right. So homework really is different in every class and really personal for every teacher. But a lot of times when we get homework, a lot of professors don't actually structure the homework. Because remember, some of our students are still learning how to be good students. Sometimes our students come into college with very poor study and academic skills. So, especially for first year, second year, they could be a genius in the content, but for studying, they still need a lot of support. So, some ideas is how to figure out how to structure. Let's say you give 1 hour of homework. Of that 1 hour of homework, how can we structure it to give some time for previewing the next lesson, maybe some learner training, and then some review and practice? Some professors might say, okay, 30 to 40 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. All right. For 10 minutes before the next class, I want you to preview the study guide. That could be support the next lesson. For review and practice, that could be homework that's connected to something that they did in the previous class. Okay, so here are some ideas here.
Matt asks, what do you mean by the learner's training?
Yeah, so some people don't know how to study. So learner training would give them some resources and skills on, let's say, how to type better, how to use AI, where to look for information if you don't understand this part of the content. So how to help students survive by themselves. Yeah, they need resources, but I think the challenge is a lot of professors are good at teaching the content, but not a lot of professors are good academic advisors. But sometimes for some of our students, we need to give them academic support. But for some professors, we just don't have enough experience to do that for some students, especially for students who have some learning challenges. Okay. I remember when I was looking at K through 12 school, if you have a child who has learning challenges, a lot of times the teacher will say, just leave that student alone. But we can't do that in university, hopefully. And so we have to figure out how to give them some resources to help themselves. It's hard because not every student has that experience. But here are some ideas. I recommend if you give homework, the due date is 2 days after class. Okay. Um, yeah, 2 days after class. And then the next part of the homework, you have some kind of recall of retention. Have them sit for like 10 minutes and just think, what are the words that I remember from the last class? What are some questions that I have from the last class? You've done that in this workshop, right? What are 4 things I remember? And then preview the study guide. Now, why is it due in 2 days? Well, some of you might have seen this, right? Did you know that students are better at forgetting than learning? Did you know that? It takes years to learn, but only a few weekends to forget. When students come back from summer break, say, so what did you study during summer? Nothing. Are you ready for the next semester? No way. So our class is the same. This learning curve or this forgetful curve says that this is where you have class. And right after class is when they remember most of the content, if they understood all your content. But some students walk away from our class only understanding 80% or less of the content. So actually, this is less. And as time goes by, 24 hours, they have forgotten about 20-30%. And the more time that passes, the more they have a chance to forget the content. So I recommend that if you give homework, it should be due relatively quick, right after the class. Because if they don't do it, what happens? When do most students do homework?
Before due.
5 minutes before the due date.
Yeah.
and you have to ask yourself why. Why do students, are they just procrastinators? Are they just people who do everything at the last minute? Some yes, but also it could be related to what we call Parkinson's law. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. I gave a student 1 month to finish the project, and the student was late. And I asked the student, I gave you 1 month. When did you start doing the project? 2 days before the deadline. So even if you give students more time to do the homework, a lot of times because of Parkinson's law, they're still waiting to the last moment. So it doesn't actually help the student to give them more time. If they feel urgency, they will make time for the activity. Now, 2 days might still be too quick. Don't do it more than 3 days. After 3 days, they've forgotten more than half. There's no recovery. And what are they going to do right before the homework due date? Let's AI. Let's chat GPT. And that's happening more and more because chat GPT and Gemini are so easy to use now. It's multimodal now. The other day, I had a picture and then I asked Gemini to turn this picture into a lesson plan. It's unbelievable what it can do in just a couple of seconds. Okay, so take my advice. Don't wait till the last minute to assign the homework due date. Okay, so I'll leave you with one last slide. One of my favorite quotes. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, there's this big thing that I'm afraid of tripping on, so I'm always very careful. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending this workshop. Okay, so if you want to get in touch, that's my email, ramonsensei@gmail.com, and I might be able to give you some more ideas on CLT and just more efficient pedagogy in various fields. Okay. Might try to email me relatively soon because I'm retiring in 2 months. So
Okay.
I know I'm gonna be financially, no, I'm gonna be work free for the next 50 years.
Wow. Okay. We can invite it. So, any question from the audience? Yes.
So, is there any way you suggest to motivate students to participate in the class activity other than giving extra credit?
Yes, there are 72 different ways.
Any like top ones that you suggest?
Well, in some best practices, if you had more time, you would co-construct the lesson. So you would assign students some kind of task, and they would be in charge of leading part of the lesson. I think that if students make their rules, they'll follow their rules. If students make or design a way that they want to learn, they'll learn that way. But you can't just tell the student, tell me what you want to learn. The students need guidance and practice. They need help with that. So I would say if you have co-teachers or teaching assistants, you can get them involved in helping like mini groups present to your co-teacher or your teaching assistant. You could give them some resources to self-study because honestly, a language teacher would just say, okay, be in a group and then have a presentation. But sometimes that's not the most effective way to motivate people. I think people are motivated when they see some kind of benefit of engaging the task. And that doesn't mean that they always have to win with some kind of physical reward. It could just be something like, oh, I did a good job today, or I'm 1% better than I was in the last class, or I had this goal at the beginning of the class and I achieved it. So another approach could be goal making. Um, when most people travel, what do you do before you travel?
Plan.
You plan and research. When you climb a mountain, do you just go to any mountain or do you plan? When students come to our class, they don't plan. So they're already going to fail. So one part of motivation is to have them have like reflection journals. And I did a little research on that, and students were more motivated in class because they wrote about their learning, and I could give them some feedback. But depends on how many students you have. So I've had some lecture classes where I've had like 200 students.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to actually
Right.
give individual tailored feedback to every student. But there are some ways to motivate some students in those cases without giving them, extrinsic physical rewards. Okay. Co-construction and have them do some of the activities is one way to do that. Also, I ask my students, which do you prefer, more tests or more homework? And depending on their answer, that might actually help them figure out how they can learn. most students say they want less homework than tests, which is good for me because less homework means less grading.
Right.
So I'm actually happy. So I would say probably the simplest approach that's underrated is talk to your students and ask them what is a good lesson for you, and what is a bad lesson, and then adjust. A lot of professors don't for a lot of different reasons, and I'm not judging because it's happened to me. Sometimes you're in an environment where you have no support from, policymakers or your boss, and you have. One time I had 400 students in one class with no technology and no mic, and they said teach, and I said okay, right. So, talk to the students.